What it do, everybody? It's your boy, King Crowder, back again with another edition of History You Did Not Know and Things That Are Not Taught in Detail for Show. Today's lesson is on the great Oscar W. Micheaux. He was a Black American author, film director, film producer who produced over 44 films. Although a short life picture company, did you know that he was the most movie company and controlled by a Black filmmaker? He was the first Black American filmmaker that produced a race of films. He was the most successful Black American filmmaker of the first half of the century. He produced silent and sound films. If I told you something else, what if I told you the Oscar award was about him? What if I told you the Oscar award system was inspired by him? What if I told you that the Oscars that we put in such high regard are called his name? Mr. Micheaux was born on a farm in Metropolis, Illinois, January 2nd, 1884. He was the fifth child born to Calvin and Belly Mixer, who were the total of 13 children. In his later years, he added the E to his last name. His father was born an enslaved man in Kentucky. Because of his family's surname that appears to be of French descent settlers, refugees and settlers in 1700 descendants will likely migrate to Kentucky after the American Revolutionary War. So, let's recap it. His family come from the great state of Kentucky. They were enslaved by French revolutionaries. In his later years, he wrote about the oppression, the mental anguish. His parents had to move city to city so his children could receive a proper education. Well served themselves where they eventually ran into money problems and were forced to be sharecroppers of his day. Michael became rebellious. He struggled with his problems with his family. His father was not happy with him, sent him away to do marketing in the city, and Mikey found a job where he could speak to multiple people and learn social skills and reflect in his films. Oscar, when he was 17-year-old, decided to move to Chicago with his older brother. They began working as a waiter. Oscar became dissatisfied with his brother's view of living the good life. He rented his own place, started a stockyard, and decided to move to steel mills and hold down different jobs. After being switched out of $2 by an employee agency, Oscar said, "Hey, I'm going to be my own boss. I'm going to stand on my own shoe line," where he started his shoe shine business, which he set up in a wealthy Black American barbershop away from Chicago competition. He learned the basic strategy of business. He became a pull-upon boy at major railroads. That time, he considered procedures for Black Americans and a relatively stable job that was well paid and secure. It enabled him to travel, interact with new people. He was not formally educated, Oscar wasn't, but he profited financially from the knowledge he gained from over his travels from different perspectives all across the United States. He managed to save $1,000 in his bank account, where he made numerous connections with white people about his future endeavors. Oscar moved to Georgia County, South Dakota, where he bought land and a homesteader. This experience inspired him to write his first novels and films. His neighbors were predominantly blue-collar whites. Some recall Oscar sat at the table with his blue-collar white neighbors. Oscar's years in a homesteader allowed him to feel human relations about farming. While farming, Oscar wrote articles, submitted them to Chicago Defenders, preaching about different lives in different parts of the country. What made him such a phenomenal thing? He immersed himself in the environment. He knew how to make first-hand research, make it applicable beyond the color lines. Oscar decided to concentrate his life on filmmaking in a new industry. He wrote 7 novels. In 1913, his first novel sold 1,000 copies, The Conquest of the Negro Pioneer. It was printed, published by Book anonymously for unknown reason. He's based his experience on a homesteader, his first marriage, and largely an autobiography. Although characters changed his name, Oscar was still the same gentleman. He preached about Black America's potential, how the book outlined how Negroes were pioneered out and how they had to relocate constantly to seek achievement. He wrote over 100 letters to Negroes in the East to come west, championing them that there was so much opportunity for them to move out there. In this novel, in 1918, called The Homesteader, he decided that his mother, articles George Johnson, the manager of a Lincoln Motion Company in Los Angeles. After Johnson became a homesteader in his new feature film, he negotiated his paperwork. Oscar wanted to believe that he adopted this book to a movie. He resisted the film producer. He knew his direction. He knew what it would take. He knew that this film could be a wildly success. His success and his hunch allowed him to produce over 40 films. He drew in large audiences from internationally, breaking the color line. He began to have a stock company from $100 to a share. Oscar hired actors, actresses, and decided to have them premiere in Chicago. The film received high praise from film critics. One article said that Oscar was a historical, credible, distinct achievement. Some of the members of Chicago decided that he was well ahead of his time. His writing was superb. His silent picture films were outstanding. It brought up racial issues, dynamics. He was thought-provoking, and he was talking about the financial hardship that hurt them all during their time and era. This was the Great Depression. His film was adapted to talk about racial issues. Remember, there was only racial issues talked from a white point of view. What Oscar did was speak about it from the Black American point of view. He spoke about black women. He spoke about the relationships of black women, white men. He spoke about suicides. He spoke about racism that affect children. He spoke about mulatto children that had an African ancestry but a white father that did not respect them. His second film was called Within the Gates, produced in the 1920s. Although it is considered a response to the film Birth of Nation, if you are a Black American or anybody in this country, you must watch Birth of Nation. It was one of the most singularly hatred films that was made around World War I. Oscar made a rebuttal to this film. He showed the clear gaps and the clear misunderstandings of what this film did. He made sure the owners knew about their biological children. He made sure to bring up the mixed relationship, the hurt, the trauma, the light skin representation, the mixed people trauma of going to or basing with two families, the idolatry, the African side. The film made its way in the Jim Crow South. Black Americans who stayed in rural areas migrated to larger cities to watch it. They wanted to support a Black American in this day speaking on their side of the story. Oscar adopted this ideology, going against it by releasing film after film of race-minded issues until this time. He released The Conjuring Woman, The House Behind the Cedars. All of them deal with mixed race people who could pass while dealing with the issues of race in this country. Mind you, even though they could pass in public, when they went home, they were still considered Negroes. Oscar's films were during a time where great change happened in the Black American community. He spoke about Black life from racial issues to challenges, to fathers, to lynching, to job discrimination, to mob violence, to rape, to economic exploitations. All of these things were mentioned inside of Oscar's films. What he talked about was a heart of the issue that we still do not discuss in America. We still do not break down these issues, and we still do not refer to our systematic problems. Critics of Oscar said he was a middle-class cinema. He was elitist among the Black community. They did not want to give this gentleman credit for what groundbreaking research he did and how he changed, single-handedly changed, the film industry, elevating it, forcing a new mindset, a new thought process, and a new way of thinking. His results were gained from Black Americans all across this country. He had the spirit of Booker T, the writing of W.E. Du Bois, the ideology of Malcolm X, and the leadership of others around his time. Oscar sadly died March 25th, 1951, in Charlotte, North Carolina of heart failure. He is buried in Great Bend Cemetery outside of Great Bend, Kansas, the home of his youth, and Gray Skull said, a man ahead of his time. Oscar is the person that inspired the Oscar award that we see celebrities make. So I want you to think about how funny this is for a second. The Oscars, and you see most Black American artists complain about an award inspired by a Black American. It's kind of funny about oxymoron when you think about it. But when you think about what Oscar had to do to overcome what he had to do in his lifetime, what he had to do, even though he had unhappy living arrangement, you must understand he was a trailblazer, a legend, and his personal life showed it as such. His wife stayed in South Dakota, right? And her family was complex and burdensome with Oscar. They were unhappy with their limited arrangements. Oscar did not pay enough attention to it. He was a man motivated by his craft and what he had to do. This resulted in an emptying of the bank account. The father sold Oscar's property. That's what forced him to go out on his own and to figure it out. His last wife he was married to was Alice Russell, who he married in 1926, and Oscar and her remained married until his legacy. If you look at his filmography, you can look at all of the films promoted and created by Oscar in his time. 40 self-clone films, 8 books written, a lot of them lost, a lot of them survived. I would advise anybody to watch, go see, and see what this brother did. He was a trailblazer, an innovator, a filmographer, the best director ever? Think about it. Did you know he inspired the Oscar Award? Did you know the Oscar Award was about this gentleman? Black Americans trailblazed film, self-sustained, self-made, and broke down the racist barriers that we have in this country. He was the last filmmaker to talk about taboo topics openly. Oscar de Vu Mixer. We appreciate you, sir. We thank you for your 67 years of living. Did you know about this Black American icon? Until next time, it's your boy, King Crowder, checking out and back again, coming at you about the Oscar, who is the Oscar in real life. Did you know about this brother? Did you know the Oscar Award was about him? Did you know he was an independent filmmaker with over 45 films that were nationally accredited? Did you know he was a self-made author, film director, and independent producer? An icon, a trailblazer. Steve Jobs, who? Until next time, it's your boy, checking out. Peace.